Yeah, I have my window open because it's very nice here in Chicago, so I want to make sure that people, that people are that I mean I don't get too warm because it's fantastic. It's very rare to be like this. But so what I wanted to talk to you today is like I've noticed you put a lot of excellent advice on LinkedIn and other sources, and I was wondering if you can share some of your advice with people about like getting the news and just getting the news and doing like getting to the business and also just working in the business as well.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for seeing my stuff on LinkedIn. I
Yeah,
found
it's very
out
insightful.
I try to be encouraging on there, but I'll usually post something if I see kind of a trend in like applications or demo reels or whatever it may be that I'm seeing where I'm like, maybe if I just share something widely, it'll reach the right people and help them out as they're, moving along in their career or starting their career. And the one that I think you saw most recently that made you reach out was about appearance in demo reels.
Yes.
And what I was saying is that I've seen a trend lately, particularly um, in college students, because I'm looking at a lot of entry level candidates in my market, folks that are getting their first job out of school, want to be a reporter, and just seeing a lot of unprofessional appearance, which I expected the post to get some engagement, but I got a lot of response that I wasn't expecting, and some of it was very productive and insightful for me, and I appreciated that. But the overall message, hopefully, I think some people got caught up in specifics, maybe.
Oh, okay.
Um, but overall, the message was just be polished and groomed. It's
Mhm.
pretty as simple as that. Because I see a lot of like messy buns and like pink hair and
Mhm.
a lot of like distractions because ultimately as journalists, what we do is we tell stories. We speak truth to power. Like the focus should be on our work, not our appearance. Some people don't want to hear this, that it's not about you, right? The it's about the work you do. So if I'm very distracted by your appearance, whether it be sloppy or too flashy or whatever it may be, then I'm not really focused on your work. I'm thinking about, well, their coat's all sloppy and like open or flapping in the wind or wow, those hoop earrings are really big or you know what I mean? I'm not focused on the story and what you're trying to tell me. So that was the core message.
Well, can you just break it down for people? Now, first of all, why do you think people are dressing like that coming out of school?
Well, it's a combination of things, I'm sure. One being we're in a post-pandemic world, and there was a lot of casual appearance in the pandemic, right? We're all sitting in our sweatpants and logging on to Zoom, and why dress up if you're just sitting on the couch, showing up to your obligations? And I totally get that. And a lot of people have now grown up in that reality where they're actually like going to class, like in their pajamas, like that. And it's hard to break out of that when you're then entering the adult world. Um, I think as a society, our expectations have lowered a bit there too, probably because of the pandemic. So in general, society is more accepting of that. I'm young. I understand times change. I'm probably not as strict about things as people think from that post, but at the same time, um, again, you should be groomed. Like I don't want to see you in like jeans and a crop top and you're real. And I have seen that. I have seen like extremely casual appearance like that. So that's one thing. The pandemic has really changed our expectations, and especially for young people who grew up in that. Um, I think secondly is like there's probably just a lack of instruction from their institutions. It's an awkward subject, right? To have to tell people how they should appear. Nobody likes to talk about it. I don't like to talk about it. Honestly, like I don't like to have to tell someone, hey, you should change this. It's just not comfortable. So they're probably not getting the right feedback from professors or instructors to say, hey, make sure in your demo reel that you dress professionally. So maybe they're not getting that. Um, and then thirdly, I'm sure it's, you know, the economy, right? On one hand, clothes can be cheap, though not ethical, probably. Um, but when you're just starting out or like you're starting your career, like you don't have a lot of money, professional clothes can be expensive, can be, not always. And it takes work to have to go out to like Goodwill and go through the racks and find something affordable that looks good on you, that fits, that you like. Um, or, to find one thing that you love enough that you're willing to spend the money on it and just wear that piece often. So it's probably all three of those things and other things on top of that combined. Um, but the biggest one is probably like the cultural shift after the pandemic.
Okay. And then also, so when you see people dressed like that, are they automatically nixed from a possible job?
You know what? No. Um, but they may not get the job they applied for. Um, I am looking at the whole person, I'm trying to, everybody comes from a different life experience. I'm looking for intelligence and potential. Um, if, the rest of your resume is pretty solid and you write well, you ask good questions, you show good journalistic instincts, good ethics, yeah, I'll talk to you about, hey, well, the reel wasn't really strong enough for this position, but would you be interested in producing? Would you be interested in writing for digital? And then, while you're here, you may like that role, or you may shadow people along the way and work your way to a role that you want more, that's on camera or whatever. Um, so yeah, it's not automatically disqualifying. Um, if I see other traits that are desirable for our newsroom.
Okay. And also, I was just thinking that, if people are applying to like LA or Miami, I'm just giving two examples. Those places are so stylish, like even in everyday life, that probably if they were to show up with that kind of interview, the people would be like, "What's up with this person?" And they would just be rejected because they're more an image there as a culture, in my personal opinion.
I get what you're saying. Yeah. Of course, I can only speak for myself and for my hiring practices in our newsroom. So another
Okay.
news director, that's the other thing about all this is like, when I share advice, I can only speak for myself. Um, Other news directors are going to be more strict and more lax than I am in different ways. Like someone, it's just best to kind of play it safe sometimes because you don't know what kind of news director out there who's going to be like, okay, I am like disqualified, delete this application because they found the appearance unprofessional.
Mhm.
Um, I don't, I'm sure they're out there. Like that's not me, but it might be someone else. So you just never know who you're dealing with.
Yeah, that's good advice. Now, what other advice do you have for people? Because now that because before when I interviewed you some years ago for the INBA, you were working in a smaller market and you were not a news director, right?
I was assistant news director, so you know, similar but different. Um,
Okay. But now that you're more in charge, do you have any other advice for people
um, like specifically for college students or like college grads.
or people new to the business?
Sure. Um, I think my main advice for people is to add depth to your reporting in college. Um,
What
there's
does
a
that mean?
lot, right? There's a lot to learn in broadcasting in terms of the technical stuff. Like we're learning how to use the camera, learning how to edit a video, learning how to write well, learning how to conduct interviews, how to synthesize the information and deliver it concisely. There's a lot of that, and you kind of have to start with simple topics to get into that routine. But the thing that I really want to see when I'm hiring prospective journalists is critical thinking skills and tackling complex topics. Because at the end of the day, the work that we do here is complex. We have a lot of news to cover, and I need to see that somebody has critical thinking skills and can ask tough questions and learn about difficult problems in our society when they walk in the door here. And if, the only stories you did were like the dance marathon charity at your school and like MOS on the street or whatever, that's a lot of the stuff I see is like, they just kind of covered campus events. They got man on the street interviews. That doesn't really demonstrate critical thinking to me. It just shows me that you can kind of go through the routine. And it's okay if you have a little of that in your reel, but I need to see evidence that you can do something more complex, like you cover a court case or like break down a city budget or file a FOIA request, because we're going to ask you to do that here. And it's going to be too much to learn on the fly. Like if you really don't know enough about the world, US history, current events, what's going on around you, how local governments work, you're going to be drowning. You'll be overwhelmed because you're going to be trying to learn all these things on the fly that you should already kind of have an understanding of, at least a mild understanding. That's definitely a key point of advice I would give to people entering the biz.
Well, also it's also a curiosity because when I talk to old school journalists, okay, I'm talking about people who have been in the business for like 40 years or whatever, they went through a lot of training, but plus they were very curious about the way things worked in the culture. And so and also they came up through many steps. So when they were entering the media or just getting started, they already had an idea or they read books or they knew history and then they knew how to approach things. But do you think it's also like an education situation? Like, could the schools do more?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I've definitely seen just some people that are they might just be lacking in a good understanding of like US history or like kind of, I don't know, I don't want to say basic stuff, but things that you should know if you're going to be a journalist.
Mhm.
Um, but the best journalists know a bit about US history. They know a bit, or like they have a topic that they're passionate about, like education or civil rights, the environment, um, something that they're interested in that they know a bit about. But you're right, yeah, there's the best candidates have that curiosity about them. And they're definitely out there. I definitely talk to people where I'm just delighted to hear how educated and passionate they are about something. And I always, I always try to get those people in my newsroom because they do great work. So yeah.
Well, the people who have that passion or that background, how can they be discovered? Like, what advice do you do? Should they join organizations or what should they do?
Yes, I think making in-person connections matters a lot. Digital connections matter too. I've had college students just reach out to me on LinkedIn and ask if I could look at their reel. I always say yes. Ask if they can just have a call with me to, yeah, ask questions about the industry, pick my brain, whatever, look at their stuff, give them advice. Making connections with people and forming relationships, networking is really important. I love the IMBA. I miss it. I have a baby now, and I'm here in Indiana, and it makes it hard to, participate from afar. But I think that's such a great organization where they really are old school in the sense that you're gonna meet people in person, like have a cocktail, chat about the industry, and those are the conversations you really remember. Um, we could, Zoom and chit chat and whatever all day, but you really remember the people that you meet in person and that make an impression on you. Um, so
Yeah. Yeah, and also, what's good about going to the actual conferences, IMBA conferences, is that if you have any random questions for people, or if you do have a reel, you can ask somebody, hey, can you check this out? And it can be casual and they'll take the time because they've got the time and they're there to help people.
Yep. They're there just to chat about the biz and have a good time, and it's like a captive audience.
Yeah. Well then, so another thing, so people should be are well informed about what they're getting into. Now, if they're in school, how do they go to town meetings and so forth? If their station is only sending them to campus stuff, or can they initiate that stuff?
You just kind of got to go rogue.
Okay.
Um, I actually just was talking to a student. She was awesome. Wonder if she'll hear this. She was saying how her university doesn't really have a good program for broadcasters. It's very print focused, and like um, she was just kind of struggling to get the resources she needed. But she said that she was just going out on her own with like her cell phone and like a little like cell phone tripod, and got like a little microphone, and was going and like shooting packages and doing stuff just completely on her own. Like, oh, she saw there was like a protest on campus. She went out and like did a story and like shot it like a news story, did like stand-ups and everything. And I was like, that's awesome. That's exactly what you have to do. Like if you're not getting what you need from your school, you just got to do it on your own. And then like she did, she sought out feedback. She connected with me and wanted me to look at her reel, and or I don't remember who connected with who actually. I talked to a lot of people, but um yeah, she like sought out expert opinion. She's networking, she's trying to get feedback. Like that's perfect. Um if you don't, yeah, if you're not getting challenged enough by your school, you can go beyond that. And also make sure you're creating a schedule for yourself that suits the needs of a journalist. Like to do student media, like you probably need to be available in the evening. So try not to sign up for classes in the evening. So whether you're doing like student newspaper or student TV, radio, like most of the time I feel like they gravitate towards like evening meetings, evening things that they're covering. So just make sure you're arranging your schedule around that. I hate this is going to be controversial advice, but um what matters to employers is if you can do the work, not if you got good grades. So like graduate, please do well in class. Don't blow it off, but the priority should be getting experience. Um, so if you have to do like a 101 like physical education class, that's not important. Like schedule it at a time that you can do it, get it over with, and make sure you create that time where you can go cover important stuff. And even like when choosing a school, I think it's important to choose a university where logistically you can like get to things. Some universities are a little like closed off from the city they're in logistically. Like you couldn't just like walk to the courthouse or to the police department or whatever to like get a news story. You might have to drive, or like I don't know. um I would really think about that. If you're choosing a university, like are they close to the town center where you could like take a camera, walk down to the courthouse, make it easy for yourself, because it's really hard logistically if like you just don't have a way to get to where you're going and you're kind of stuck on campus or whatever it may be, because that makes a big difference in just like the everyday challenges of trying to get stories done or get experience. I picked courthouse. I mean, it could be other things, but you just want to be close to kind of the town center. Like I went to IU. IU is very much on, it's like ingrained in the city. So you could walk to the police station, you could walk down to the courthouse, you could, get around pretty much everywhere, like on foot or on a bike or public, like a bus. The buses were running frequently and everywhere. So yeah, that's important. Yeah.
It's just, whenever people talk about people doing stuff like going rogue or doing stuff on their own, it reminds me of extremely successful people, for instance, in Hollywood. So, okay, an obvious example is Steven Spielberg. He's a multi-billionaire, whatever he is. But the thing is, it wasn't like he went to school and then he started getting in the business and doing stuff. He was doing stuff early on because it was his passion that led him there. And I think with journalism, it seems to be similar where, if you see a story, it's hard to ignore. So like for instance, I worked with this guy and his official role was not reporter, but he was very passionate about reporting and he did some. So what happened was if he'd come upon a story, it would just decide to create a story, write a story.
Yeah. Yeah, for
And it's your
sure.
passion that takes you.
Yes, or just being open and observant.
I've been observing, yeah.
You can't control when news is going to happen. So it's best to be open, eyes and ears open, out of the phone, take your earbuds out.
Now, what about people who they get into journalism and like for instance, they're hired as MMJs, multimedia journalists. Now, back in the day, these jobs were separated. So people could focus on, being a reporter or being an anchor or whatever. And now they have to be a reporter plus do digital plus shoot their own stuff. How do people deal with that? And what advice do you have?
Well, I will say I, as a news manager and someone who was an MMJ, I've kind of tried to chip away at that a little bit. I can't wave a magic wand and, split up all those jobs again, but I try to lighten the load when I can because the more jobs you add on one person, potentially the less productive their work will be. I like quality and I like quantity. But first I want quality. So I do, I think there is I hope, I shouldn't say I think there is. I hope that there is some awareness from news managers that people are tired, and they're not going to stay in this business if more duties are added on them over and over and over again. So I try to, remove some of that when I can. Like if somebody's working on a special project, like give them a photog or like, they have a lot going on with their story or it might not be in the safest area. Like give them a photog if you can just let go of the anchor VOSOT that you were gonna do and like give them a person to go with them or like we have some part-time digital people that like do the social posts for the reporters. So like they do have to write the web story, but some people don't realize how much extra time it takes just to come up with like the social lead and the thumbnail and to clip the video. And like all of a sudden it's been another like 30 minutes of just doing all that. And so like, yeah, we have digital people who do that for them and they like clean up the grammar on the web story and all that. So I try to lighten the load. Now I can't even remember what the original question was. How do people
Well,
deal?
MMJ, well, advice for people who become MMJ, but you're saying at
Yeah.
your station, try to lighten the load because other stations don't do that.
I'm sure some do, some don't, right? Like I don't know what all the other stations are doing, but I know just from what I see online, from talking to people in person, I'm in a lot of Facebook groups. People are really tired, they're really burnt out. We need good journalists so badly. Our democracy, our freedom depends on people doing good work. And if they're quitting right at once they hit their stride and they've been doing this for a few years and can really, start making a difference in the work they're doing, they're quitting. And that breaks my heart. I mean, we just need seasoned journalists in our society for our own good. We hold the power to account. We are the fourth estate. And if people keep getting burnout and leaving, there's going to be no one left. That keeps me up at night. I want people to keep doing this work. It's so important. Um, and I guess that's what I would say, like to someone who's struggling, is that your work does matter. And even when it feels overwhelming, it does make a difference. How do people deal with it? When I was an MMJ, I guess that was probably what kept me going. And I actually liked MMJ. Not everybody likes it. Some people feel overwhelmed by it. I loved having that control over my own story. Like it really, I try to tell people, you really know what you've got. Like, sometimes having a teammate is nice, but sometimes it's a lot of, miscommunication and like you don't fully know what material you have on a tight deadline. So like when you're on your own, like you can really like structure your time well, and you're like, I know exactly what B-roll I'm gonna write to because I shot it. I know it. It's gonna be so good. You can really structure a story that shines because you know exactly what you have and the vision you're gonna create, how it's gonna come together. You know who you've talked to, what they said, where everything is, and you can just like bing, 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 like get it together and oh, you own that story. It's yours. You can be really proud of it. That creative control keeps a lot of people going. Other people, they just want a teammate to work with or multiple teammates. They need to bounce things off of people. They might be overwhelmed. They need someone to focus on one thing while they focus on something else. Um, it just, yeah, everybody's different, but I personally loved that creative control. I try to remind people of that when, they might not be loving it. And maybe they never do, and that's okay. Everybody's different.
Yeah. Well, I mean, also one reason why people are quitting is because of the pay, especially if stations are requiring people to have a college degree a lot of times, or to have a either a 4-year degree or an associate's degree. And then I know in some states they barely pay minimum wage. Now in Chicago, we have a higher minimum wage, but in other states they have a minimum wage that you literally can't live on. So how does the business reconcile that?
That is a question I cannot answer. As
Like, what's the incentive? Like if people are working so hard
yeah,
and then they put, they've gone to college, they have loans usually, they get in for a year, they're not getting a pay raise or anything, or they're not even making enough. And
yeah.
so what can be done to prevent that?
I can't tell you what could be done to prevent it, but I can say for, now that I've been doing this a decade, talking to my other friends that I've maintained in the business, it can be hard in the first few years to see the light at the end of the tunnel, but it does get better. People who have stuck with it do tell me, they're like, I was so stressed about money in the first few years, but it did, like, I feel fine now. It got better. Like, I stuck with it. I got promoted. I got different jobs. You know, now they're okay. Like, they're fine. And, you know, not, these are people like still on air or like not in management or anything. So like they're on the same track that they started on. And they're okay. And it's hard, can you weather that first few years to get there? That's a question for the individual. I can say when I started, I made like $24,000 a year. I was freaking out. I didn't know what to do. I just prayed I would get a full-time job in my hometown because I couldn't afford to move. I couldn't afford to get an apartment. I paid for my own college, like you were saying, like I paid for school. I had a little bit of scholarships. I had loans. I didn't have any money. And I luckily did get a job in my hometown. I lived at home, tried to save money. I had to dip into my 401k to move, which is terrible because you get taxed on it. I didn't have any other money. Um, and I just stayed the course until I climbed out of it. Now my student loans are paid off. My car is paid off. I have a good 401k nest egg again. Like there's gonna be scary moments. But if you kind of stay the course, and not everyone will stay in this, right? The business isn't that big. It starts with a big pool of people interested and whittles down over time. And that's partially because people find out they don't like it. They don't want to do it. They don't like it enough to kind of weather that first few years. And that's okay. It's kind of that's like any career, right? People start it and they may not find out they don't love it. But if you do stick with it and stay, it does get better. I want to be part of the solution to make it better from the beginning. How do I do that? I don't know. I'm still young. I'm still learning. I, this is not sustainable probably in the long term, the way it's going. I know it's always been like this where news doesn't pay very well in the beginning. But there is kind of a cultural shift nationwide among many industries, right? That people aren't making enough money to keep up with inflation and the way of the world. So something's got to give, right? I'm not an expert. I want to be a part of that change though, where hopefully someday people are making a good wage right off the bat because we need people to do this work.
Or a
So,
livable wage. I mean, because good
yeah.
wage, that's usually after you pay your dues and you get a good wage. But I mean, I have one solution. One solution is if stations really want good talent, they should help pay off the loans or pay off a percentage of the loan. So they're not getting it in their salary, but they could give them like 5,000 towards their loan or something if they sign on to a certain amount of time. Sort of like there are situations where people go to med school and then they have, incredible loans or a situation, but let's say they go to a certain med school and the med school will say, okay, now you have to serve in an under-resourced area and for 2 years, like, or, that kind of program. So they could
Yeah.
do something like that. Like, stick with us for 2 years, we'll pay off such and such percentage of your loan.
Yeah. That would be an added incentive because
Yeah.
we already are largely like a contract business, but um, that would be like an added incentive not to
Yes.
break the contract. So,
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be like a horrible contract, but it's just be like, hey, if you stick with us and we'll help you grow, whatever. And then also there's a two-way relationship or unionize. I mean, I don't know, you have to do something, but um okay, another question I have is grammar. Like you mentioned grammar earlier. How important is grammar at this point? Like when I was coming up, grammar was very important, so.
it should be important. I got called out in my post about appearance because I used something that was technically incorrect. Okay.
Well, it's a typo. I mean, we all have typos,
Oh no, it wasn't a typo. I said less and less instead of fewer and fewer, and I was
Oh,
correctly called out on that. It was a little
that's
bit
colloquial. Yeah.
okay. Yeah, I write like I talk. I get that it's not completely proper, but that's how we write in TV, right? Write like you
Yeah,
talk.
exactly.
Should. I get it. Fair point. I got nitpicked on that by a few commenters. It's okay. I will say, gosh, this is a can of worms question because now more often than that, I'm trying to determine if the person actually wrote what they sent me themselves or if it was AI.
Yeah.
So AI is pretty good at being grammatically correct, but it sounds really canned and generic and
It doesn't
impersonal.
sound like the voice of the person. Yeah, because I put stuff in AI just to see like, what do you think of my tone, just to see if it was too harsh or whatever. And then it's like, it's fine, but here's how to fix it. I'm like, no, that doesn't sound like me anymore. But okay, go ahead.
Yeah, no, you're right. I can tell I get a lot of applications now where immediately I'm like, AI wrote this.
Hope this email finds you well.
That no, or the words that really stick out to me as AI are like dynamic content or like
Yeah.
stuff that means nothing really, but sounds kind of good. I get a lot of like engaging audiences and dynamic creative content, and I'm like, what?
It sounds like corporate speak or something.
Yeah, and I can tell right away that's AI probably. And as a journalist, I've disqualified. I haven't even looked at the application after that. If I saw that it looked like AI, I'm like, if you can't write your own like cover letter, like introduction to me, like you're not gonna write your own story. So see you later. Bye.
And also, a lot of times, like broadcast writing is writing to deadline, and you have to be correct, or else, like, let's say you write for TV, for instance. If you write for an anchor and there's a problem in it, the anchor will read it, and it could be then they have to backtrack and fix the problem, fix the error. So
Yeah. But it can be a good tool for correcting grammar. I mean, spell check is AI.
yeah,
That's fine. Like, um, but anyway, back to the original question of grammar. I would rather see that you can write conversationally than necessarily be like a perfect grammar sleuth. But I'm a little more lax than I probably should be with the understanding that people probably have come up in a more casual time with like texting, um, like using audio memos now more maybe than like writing a text or they've been brought up in like a different era of education and writing. And I can teach that stuff more. Like if you can be accurate and compelling and conversational, that's more important to me than if you have your comma in the right place. But you should still be able to do that. Or like be able to learn it. If you're a compelling writer, you have the capacity to learn good grammar. And we also have, like I said, our digital team proofreads the like AP style stuff and like checks all those things. So we have editors assisting with that. But again, if you are someone who knows how to ask good questions, knows about history and current events, um, asks good interview questions, shoots well, writes compelling stories, and like, okay, well, I can forgive some less than ideal grammar, but it's still important. I don't want to say it's not important.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. I was asking you that too. Like, what layers of editing do you have? But you just answered it that you have the digital people looking at it to make sure it's correct.
Yeah, sometimes depending on the story, you may have one manager um proofread, like for the on-air story, maybe one manager looks at it and like approves it. Especially if it's like just kind of a light story or not anything particularly controversial or important. Some stories have like four people look at it. I've had stories where we had four or five managers look at it for approval. And then in addition to that, like the web people looking at it for just for the grammar and all that. So we're a good onion over here. We got lots of layers.
No, that's good because some places don't have layers and there's some errors. But yeah, I love broadcast writing and digital writing. It's just the most exciting writing because it's immediate, it's urgent, and it's very exciting. It's not like you have to write something and it's due in a week, you know?
Yes. I think maybe because of the time I've spent in news, I have a harder time with projects that take time. I just kind of want to like bust it out, like
Yeah.
just crank that writing out. And I can do that easily. If you need it fast, I got you. If it's you're gonna give me like 2 weeks to do it, I'm gonna waffle and wonder.
So now what other advice do you have? Because you've also been posting in bits and bobs, as the British say, different advice for people. So what other on LinkedIn especially? Is that your main outlet?
Yeah, I would say so because I mean that's where professionals are looking, right? I don't have a TikTok. Uh I don't, I'm mostly sharing things on LinkedIn because that's where other professionals are looking for advice or looking for jobs or giving advice. I read other people's advice. So um
What can people connect with you on LinkedIn? What is your LinkedIn so that people can connect with you?
yeah, it's just Molly Jirasek. I have a unique name, so I don't think there are any others on there. But I am pretty accepting on LinkedIn. I'm not somebody who you have to come up to me in person and ask like permission to add me. I pretty much accept everybody unless it looks like they're a bot. So if you look like you're not a real person, I will reject you. If you look like a real person, I'll say yes, even if you're not in news. Yeah, I get people from all sorts of different industries that they want to connect, whatever. It's a place to network. It's a place to connect. It's not like Facebook where I'm only accepting people I know. It's literally a place to get to know people. Um, so
Well, do
I'm
you
accessible.
do well, do you have people who apply to your station who are not on LinkedIn?
Yes. If I can't find them on LinkedIn, it is kind of a bummer because I'm looking to see what work they've done recently, and I do gravitate towards people who have like recently posted like, here, look at my latest package, or like, oh, I just went on a study abroad thing. Here, look at my pictures. Like, I just want to see like, what are you doing, uh, as a journalist, as a producer, a director, like whatever you're working on. I just kind of want to see that you're doing. Are you doing your thing? If I can't see what you're doing. It all, I hate to say this, but we live in such a digital age where like everything is out there all the time. I have to question like if someone gives me their resume and they have like no proof of performance, I'm like, well, did they really do it or are they just saying they're doing it?
Yeah.
That was easy to do, 10, 15 years ago, just say like, oh, I work for my student TV station and the only way I could see if you did or you didn't is if you send me some like a reel you did. But now, like people really share the work that they're doing on a regular basis, and it's very encouraging when I see that they're posting like, here's the last story I did, here's the last show I anchored, like I produced this newscast at my school. I'm like, oh, that's great. Like it shows me that they're being for real, that they really are walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Yeah, I
So
always say that to people if they want to, quote unquote, become a writer or whatever. I say, where's your blog? Where's this? Where's that? Oh, I don't have one. I mean, but what's really great about today's media landscape is that people can post their stuff online and they can be current and show people they're actually doing what they say.
yes. And that's what I'm looking for on LinkedIn from any candidate, really, especially like college age students, because you're trying to get an idea of are they really doing the work that they say they are. Every college program is different, and some are more rigorous than others. Um, so I'm trying to get an idea of like, are they really doing hands-on work, or is it just kind of like sit there, take notes, coursework? Because that's not going to be helpful for them in the long term, unfortunately. Sometimes I feel for students that they end up going to a school that doesn't have maybe the right resources for them to be in broadcasting. It's a lot of just kind of like standard sit there, take notes, do a course, take a test. That's not what they need. It's not fair to them. So
But if they have for instance, the latest iPhone, they've got the studio right there because I mean, it used to be like you
yeah.
had to separate like GoPro and your phone, and now it's all in one.
Yes. What a blessing. To think I just am picturing myself in college when I had like I didn't have a car for a while and I had a campus job. I had to bring like my uniform and a change of clothes and a camera. I would be carrying some days on the bus like a tripod, a broadcast camera, a backpack with my laptop, with like physical textbooks, with a bag of like lunch and like um my change of clothes. And wow, my back hurt. Now, oh my gosh, if I just had and the quality is so good.
Yeah.
Because I not right when I got to college, but like early in college, I got a smartphone, but the quality stunk. It wasn't as good as it is now. And you could obviously see the difference of like a cell phone video to like a camera video. Now it's a little harder to tell.
Yeah. Now, what other advice do you have for people? Because I
Mm,
know you've got to run soon to another
yeah, I
meeting.
do. I guess, I would say I see this question a lot.
Mhm.
Is journalism dying? And my answer is absolutely not. There will always be journalism as long as there are living, breathing humans walking around this earth. It's just a matter of how they consume it in the medium. And the thing you need to know is how to do good journalism and know as many mediums as possible because it's ever evolving. Know how to write well, know how to podcast, know how to do a newscast, know how to, you know, write packages, write radio briefs, whatever, write articles, do TikToks, make reels, make slides on Canva, like know how to do all these different things because we don't know where the medium is going, but the need for journalists will always be there. Um, so just be prepared for all the different platforms that are available. But journalism's
Okay,
not.
that's the delivery method. But
Yeah,
what is good journalism?
good journalism upholds democracy, speaks truth to power, reminds us of
What
our
does that mean, though? Speaks truth to power. What does that mean? A lot of people say that phrase.
powerful people lie a lot. whether they're in government, they're an individual, they're a corporation, they're an organization, they're a family. Like people lie, and it's our job to find the truth. Um, that's important, especially now, because truth is so debated. And yeah, we need truth tellers. We need people to uphold the freedom of the press. We need people to, again, like I said, remind us of our humanity. There's good things too, sharing stories of success, of encouragement, of compassion and goodness. Those are important things that emphasize the quality of life where you are, and what's good about it, what can be better. Solutions journalism. There's so many, gosh, I could go on, but think of all the things.
What's solutions journalism? Because I remember we went to that at the INBA conference.
Yeah,
What is solutions journalism?
boy, it's easier said than done. I'll say that. I mean, solutions journalism is reporting that's focused on solutions to problems in our society versus just covering the problem. I think a lot of this is deadline related. We have a limited amount of time to cover a story. So if you're doing a day turn, say about, let me think, like sewage getting into groundwater. I just made that up. Sewage getting into groundwater in some neighborhood. You're really only going to have time to explain the problem. And that can be demoralizing for the audience. So a lot of like daily news gathering is just telling people all the problems we have without reporting on any solutions or available solutions. And that, some would say that that is a big reason why people have tuned news out. Because they're like, it's so negative, it's so depressing. Well, if you like refocus that story and just maybe you look for another town and another, through other journalists' work, where have they had this problem? Someone else has had this problem for sure. It can't be the only place. What did they come up with a solution? What worked to fix this problem? Like, how can you put your reporting in a lens of like, well, this is the problem, but here's a place that found a solution. And it doesn't mean that that's the only answer. You have to be careful that you're not leading people's thinking. Good news coverage happens over the course of time. It's not just over one day. So there may be multiple solutions. You don't want to lead people's thinking, but you also don't want to just bombard them with problems with no possible solutions. So that's solutions journalism in a nutshell.
And then any other advice you have for people? This is your chance to put it all together instead of like posting random things every few
Yeah.
months or well, like while you're thinking, I do have a question. Let's say
Sure.
that somebody is not a recent college grad and they want to get into the media. Do you
Mm.
recommend that? Because I noticed that I'm just gonna be straight, man. Like I notice there's age discrimination in the media. Now in
Oh,
other areas there's not.
well,
But
I would say, just in my newsroom, I have a couple people that this was not their first career. I have a former police officer who's now an investigative reporter. I have a former mental health
wow.
professional who's a producer.
Sorry,
Um,
I talked over you. Have a former mental health professional?
mhm, yep, and she's a producer. Yeah, we have people here who like this wasn't their first career, and they're not old, but they're experienced. Um, and they do great work. And yeah, I would definitely encourage, if you're interested in it, do it. Yeah, I think somebody else that we recently onboarded, like what did they do? It's escaping me. Yeah, we have veterans. We've had people who've like owned a farm and like do different things. And that's important experience. I mean, in a newsroom, you want diversity of thought, right? And if everybody's kind of coming from the same background, that's not very good for good journalism. So yeah, I would surely encourage anyone who's interested, um, give it a shot.
Okay. And then what about, because I noticed on your LinkedIn also that you have a hiring banner or oh whatever it is. Yeah, the purple thing. So are
Yep.
you really just always hiring?
I mean, we pretty much always have an opening of some kind. Right now, I've got MMJ openings. Those are probably the most crucial. I've got a social media manager. I've got an assignment desk opening. What else? I have one anchor opening. I have a special projects opening. But it's just kind of the cyclical nature of the business, right? That like once I, get a bunch of people hired, like somebody else is leaving, or it just kind of happens. But I make sure I'm always networking and talking to people because you never know when an opening is going to come up, and you kind of want a good pipeline of people who are you've talked to, a network you've built. So I always have the door open, but I wouldn't put that up there if it was a lie. Like I have genuine open positions. I wouldn't just put that there. That would be disingenuous. But yeah, and I one thing I like about my company is they encourage that, like if don't wait for an MMJ opening if you meet a really good one, like we'll find a way to hire them. We'll figure it out. Like if you find a good person, bring them in. So,
I think MMJ sounds extremely interesting, but that's because I've been working in broadcast. I mean, I've worked in broadcast, digital, etc. And I like having all the skills together.
mhm.
And I'm not a digital native, you know? So,
I loved doing it. Sometimes I miss it. Um, Gosh, it'd be so fun to like go do that again.
well, I
So,
mean, also maybe you guys have more openings because you're a smaller market. Because I know here in Chicago, this is where people want to work. And once they get to a certain position, they just never leave unless they're laid
yes,
off or unless, they get some incredible offer somewhere else or.
100%. Yeah, it's one of those markets where people go to stay. Um, we have positions like that too, where like it's gonna be a while before they open again. But yeah, there are some where like they turn over every couple of years. And that's okay. Doesn't mean we're a bad place. I'm always flattered when people stay. I just had I think the last two like reporters I've dealt with, who like their contract was coming up, they wanted to stay, which is doesn't always happen in a market this size. So like that was really it made me happy because it means that they're happy here.
Yeah.
So
Well, you seem like, I mean, I also knew you, before you became a news director, but I mean, you seem to be not typical of other people because you seem to be very nurturing and open-minded. And I know for a fact you're passionate about news and journalism. You're just not typical, so I can see why people wouldn't want to leave. Like my advice is if you find a good place, don't leave, you know?
yeah, yeah. Well, that's very sweet. Thank you. I Nurturing is a good word. I try to be firm but kind. That's kind of my style, firm but kind, because I have, I'm no nonsense, but I'm also fun, and I want people to be happy doing what they're doing. If you're not happy, then what are we doing here?
Right. So now, if you don't have any, do you have any more advice that you can think of? Because I do
Um,
know.
I'll let you ask your question. I probably do better when I'm given a prompt.
Okay. Yeah, I can do an AI prompt. No, but what about I was gonna ask you what about your market? Like, can you explain where you are and everything?
Oh yeah, well, I'm in South Bend, Indiana, which is only about an hour and a half from Chicago, give or
You
take.
can take the train there.
Yeah, we have two trains. We have an Amtrak in the South Shore. Um, but I drive like I'm on the Dan Ryan everywhere, so I could get there in an hour and a half. So we're close by. And we gosh, what about us? So the University of Notre Dame is here is probably what we're most known for, as well as Pete Buttigieg. He was our mayor here for some time and obviously ran for president, was the um, Secretary of Transportation under Biden. So we're known for that. And I think we're one of like two largely Democrat cities in the state of Indiana. Um, so those are kind of like the highlights about what what makes us different. I would say we're like a pretty dense area. We do have, we have rural populations. We have a big Amish population here. We also cover Southwest Michigan, so we're covering a lot of like beach towns, like tourism towns. Um, they also have like their own kind of like Rust Belt cities that have gone through their like manufacturing heyday, decline, trying to figure it out now. So yeah, we're very much a Rust Belt city area, I would say. A lot of college students, obviously. The university really brings a lot of diversity and kind of all the things you would want in like a metro area. Like we've got a Trader Joe's and lots of like ethnic restaurants, and it's a nice little area. Yeah. That's
And
us.
then you're from Indiana also?
What was that? Sorry.
You're also from Indiana, right?
I'm from South Bend originally, so this is my hometown.
So what's it like? Because I know when I met you, you were working in Illinois for a while,
Mhm.
and now you're back in your hometown. What's that like to come back to your hometown?
It's kind of cool. It's interesting how things stay the same but change dramatically at the same time. Like I really feel like I know the area, but it's also evolved dramatically over time. Something that has changed a lot that I'm seeing now is investment in like data centers and stuff here. We have been kind of targeted as like a climate resilient area that um, developers are looking at to build large data centers and like growing our rural areas. There's a lot of investment in some of our areas that they were just like quaint little farm towns, and now all of a sudden like their property taxes are ballooning. Like there's all this development and change, and what a shift. It's just something I wouldn't have imagined, like 10 years ago. um so it's been
So there are
interesting.
more jobs being created there.
Hmm. I would say it's been consistent growth, like every time I would come home for like a holiday or something, like I'm seeing like construction projects, expansion, growth. I'm like, wow, 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 wow. Look at all this. Look at that. Look at this. It's cool. I mean, it makes coming home feel new instead of like um, you know, going back to the same old, same old. It's not. It's different. So that's been cool.
And then any last things since before you go to your meeting?
Yes. Uh, I think I hate to repeat myself, but I just want people to know that journalism is not dead and we need you. We need you. I need you. We
Okay,
want,
so everybody contact her through LinkedIn
yeah,
or what's in your station is. Can you please state your station?
ABC 57. Or like our call letters are WBND, but our branding's ABC 57. So we do great work. Come be a part of our team. Um, the part of the reason why I came here is because I really love our company. We're actually headquartered in Chicago, but they really allow us to do great work. Not every company would let me do like a 30-minute special on climate change, or like, we do a lot of unique work that isn't always done at a smaller market level anymore. Like we do a 2-hour pregame football show for every Notre Dame home game. That's awesome.
Well, it's
Like we
awesome because even people who from Notre Dame who live in Chicago are so into it. So
Yes,
there you go.
yes. We just do a lot of in-depth work that I'm so proud of. And yeah, journalism's not dead. Keep the faith, keep doing good work. Things get better. That's my